Greetings! I'm Cuthbert Bucket, enjoyer of films and refuser of talking about films in video essays. Video games are fucking weird, right? They're the only popular form of entertainment that actively frustrates your ability to see everything they have to offer. Let's talk about some of the methods used by game designers to achieve this frustration, and how good I think they are. After all, I am the pinwheel which all game designers must blow through. Remember the 80s? I don't. I wasn't alive then.
Pitch yourself against the computer. Millions, mostly teenagers, have.
Machine for 2.5 hours, on 1/4, mind you, and play Galaga.
You know why we're heading back here.
Part of the fascination is the way the games are designed.
Live systems. I know that you know that lives were a system that helped make arcade owners money.
Their dependency.
Well, it's the moving lights partly. Some of these games are really hard to do. It just takes a lot of skill, hand-eye coordination, and it doesn't cost as much as some other things, and it's legal.
In theory, these arcade games should have been hard enough, but well made enough to draw people in, draw out their money. Then, once they're good enough to beat the whole game on one coin, well, then they've already paid more than enough. And I know that you know that games kept this live system as they arrived in the home on consoles. Not only to keep the play the arcade at home experience, but to also make a 40-minute long game last a good few months of play. And I know that you know that lives are outdated with today's video games. Not only because you're wrong, but because you're thinking about lives in a narrow mindset. Yes, most live systems are either not interesting or can just be broken open and invalidated. That's not the fault of lives being bad, it's game developers putting lives in games where they don't serve a purpose. It's wrong place, not wrong time. Why do lives end up invalidated? There's 3 main ways. Number 1, the game has saving. Number 2, the game doesn't punish you. And number 3, the game has a lives exploit. Number 1, if your game has saving mid-playthrough, lives are pointless. The player can simply save scum through their playthrough to keep their lives. And those people who don't save scum are also barely impacted. In a game that can save, running out of lives probably sets them back around 10 minutes. Not much to worry about. The lives are redundant. And getting set back 10 minutes links to the next point. Number 2. If there's a weak punishment for losing all the lives, the game doesn't feel like a challenge, and the game doesn't feel easy. The monotony of running out of lives to play the level again to meet a lackluster punishment is boring. Speaking of being boring, number 3, lives exploits. These ones are the most common because this actually extends all the way back to the NES. Infinite life exploits are in nearly every game with them. All it takes is one exploit to completely invalidate a live system. They're very fragile. So, how do you do it right? Let's look at a fantastic example. Anton Ball Deluxe. Anton Ball Deluxe, being as deluxe as possible, has 3 games in total. For this video, I'll only be talking about Anton Ball and Punch Ball. Anton Ball and Punch Ball are arcade style. only around 45 minutes for a complete run, but you are not going to be good enough to reach the end before you play the game a bunch. Why? Lives. In Anton Ball, you gain a life by getting 10,000 points. You lose a life if the ball goes off screen, you fall into a pit, or you get hit by an enemy. It's not hard for these things to happen. You will lose plenty of lives where you wouldn't expect to. But at the same time, 10,000 points isn't super hard to get. There are continues that you can earn from the bonus levels, but using one wipes your score, and who wants that? It's a great balance that means you're still able to bring it back even if you lose a lot of lives. But due to the nature of the game, there's only a limited amount of point scoring opportunities per level, so you can never get too many lives.
Yeah!
Moving on now to now. Well, now-ish. Roguelikes are all the rage these days, and they have quite the iconic system of difficulty. You have one life for the whole game, and the game is randomised. Upon death, all the things you grab return to the void, and you must get better at the fundamentals of the roguelike to succeed and beat it. Simple enough. The game's punishing, usually short, and never the same every time. But things couldn't stay simple! Introducing meta progression, the cool kids' way of making a roguelike. But before we continue, I'm going to set 3 things clear. Classic roguelikes are these ASCII beauties. Roguelikes are games that adapt the old formula in a new way, and roguelites are roguelikes where you unlock permanent gameplay altering upgrades. Meta progression brings all the satisfying challenge of a roguelike with the permanent unlocks of most other games. If you're a liar, meta progression tarnishes the otherwise unique challenge of a roguelike with the permanent unlocks that mean the game gets easier the more you play. Oh, the joy of the roguelike is getting incredibly good at a difficult game that never fundamentally changes. You are the thing that fundamentally changes. If you get good enough at a roguelike, you can wipe your save and then immediately wipe the floor with the game. Hades is a roguelite to the highest degree I've seen one in quite a while. Honestly, it does the roguelite thing so much, to the point where I think it harms the game more than anything. In its way of locking everything, so there's always stuff to unlock, it just means the game is less fun at the start. The game makes you play with a, quite honestly, not very fun character for about 10 hours, just to drip feed you stuff until you're finally able to play as a fun character. But how do you do meta progression right? Answer is that you do as little of it as possible. And if you are locking something behind it, make it something that a new player is never going to want to use. Make it something that if you use it wrong, you instantly die. Want a great example? Noita. This game doesn't get the credit it deserves, and I need to play more of it. All of the spells Noita locks behind progression are things like the nuke, which is, self-explanatory. Nuke, if you couldn't tell, fucking kills you and everything around you. That's going to be a little useless to a new player, but a skilled player will, hopefully, be able to use it to their advantage. Unfortunately, I'm shit at Noita, but I hope to get good enough at it soon. time for a change of pace. Turn-based RPGs. If you think about it, you're beyond strategy, the way a turn-based RPG decides its difficulty is with a leveling system. Your characters have their own level, the enemies have theirs. How quickly the enemies' levels are raised, and how quickly you gain levels, is sort of the difficulty curve of the game. Alright, depending on how much you know about me. Oh, there's a fucking shit delivery! Fucking garbage! Get it out! Okay. Now, depending on how much you know about me, this is either going to be a shocking reveal, or what you've been expecting me to say since I said the word XP. I don't like this system. Because it has some problems that I find hard to overlook. Firstly, if you really like a game of leveling and play it a bunch, then the game becomes easier than it should be. Most games with leveling do not indicate how much you should be playing to keep the game on the perfect difficulty curve. But that's only if the player is good-hearted and plays by the rules. You could, alternatively, just grind away as much as possible and severely overlevel yourself on purpose so that you can 3-shot bosses and utterly smatter the idea of challenge on the wall. And hey, because the dev decides how fast the difficulty of the encounters will scale, they can essentially force you to grind if they want their game to last longer. It's a shame I don't like leveling. If it ends up in a game I love, like Secret of Mana, it's so often the worst part of the game. I hate how by playing the game, I make the game easier and I feel like I'm cheesing the game just by playing. But maybe I'm being incredibly reductive. Not every leveling system is like that. Some games only have a limited number of enemies you can fight, so they give plenty of XP, which removes grinding and doesn't let you overlevel. Equally, leveling is probably the best system for keeping a small set of characters interesting over a really long game. I suppose leveling also does the same for the world and the enemies and the environment. Maybe I shouldn't speak so authoritatively on subjects I don't know anything about. Difficulty settings! Okay. Games with leveling systems, in a way, let you pick how much the odds are stacked against you. However, many modern games have a very efficient and too direct way of doing this. Difficulty settings. I could fill a whole hour-long video about different types of difficulty settings, so let's keep this part really brief. The best use for difficulty settings is when you make a game experience that you want as many people to see the ending of as possible. For instance, The Last of Us Part 2 has many difficulty settings, from the brutal grounded to the incredibly diverse set of accessibility options, which allows as many players as possible to experience the story of the game in the way they find the most fun. Some difficulty settings aren't very well thought out though, and most of them boil down to do less damage, take more damage the higher the difficulty. These feel like they don't actually enhance the game, but were just slapped in there as afterthoughts, just to cover all bases. Unless you do what Doom 2016 did, and make each difficulty setting actually change how the enemy AI works, it might be better to go for one difficulty setting. When you go for only one, it can cause problems if you want your game to reach a super wide audience. But what it loses in widespread appeal, it makes up for in game balance. There's no question which is the intended difficulty to play the game at, and this means that everyone has the same gameplay experience. I mean, I really like tough games that have one difficulty option. Usually the challenge of the games is pretty much what makes the game fun. Cuphead technically has selectable difficulties, but only one of them lets you pass into the final world. So there's essentially one, with an unlockable expert difficulty once you absolutely demolish normal mode. Extra hard difficulties are also a nice unlock, especially for a game that's already brutally difficult. But relatively easy games with a hard mode unlock are also awesome and really help make a game replayable. This style has reasonably come under some critique, with many people saying that games like Dark Souls should have difficulty settings. Personally, I don't think they're necessary when the whole point of a game is difficulty and the reward for beating the difficult areas is even more difficult stuff, and easy mode is sort of pointless. Though I do respect that when someone has paid for the game, they might want to beat it. I think it's good for games that are difficult to really make it obvious they're hard so that nobody buys a game that's too difficult for them. Last but not least, we've got time limits. Something I'm having to deal with right now! These can be combined with other ideas like lives. A good example of that is Super Monkey Ball. With certain games, the time limit is everything. Pikmin 1. Olimar has 30 days to gather 30 parts of his ship in order to get off the hostile planet. Each day has a time limit in which you must figure out what to do next, where to go, and try to keep as many of your unruly Pikmin alive while doing so. Time limits, worked into the narrative or not, are a great way to give a game a sense of urgency. Even if it's easy to complete a level in under 2 minutes, setting a 3-minute timer makes it feel terrifying. In Wario Land 4, only part of the game is timed, the iconic escape sequences. They are fittingly accompanied by one of the scariest songs ever blasted out of a Game Boy Advance. Unless you're on hard mode, most of the timers for these sections are actually pretty fair. Sometimes a time limit is used in a multiplayer game to make sure a match doesn't go on for too long. In Kirby Air Ride, for instance, the City Trial mode only gives you a certain amount of time to buff up your vehicle. This also adds pressure in a competitive way. All players are forced to pull out all their stops and make choices fast. There's very little time to think, you just have to do. Well, I suppose that goes the same for single player stuff as well. It's something that really appeals to me. I suppose not everyone has fun putting themselves into stressful situations after a long hard day of stressful time limits. I'm just sick in the head. What about time trials? While they don't explicitly kill you for not making the time, you're still pressured into making the fastest decisions possible, and you'll likely be retrying these over and over again. You might have to beat the level as quickly as possible, or do the track as quickly as possible. It really does depend. Crash Bandicoot is famous for having really tough time trial platinum relics, and I think as a way to add to replayability, they're pretty darn good. How can I talk about time limits and miss out on Majora's Mask? That game is probably the definitive time limit video game. Like Pikmin, they really went all in on combining the game's story with the time limit. This was technically done to try and extend the game's playing time because they had like 10 minutes to make the game or something. The time limit makes everything you do in the game feel like it serves a greater purpose, and without doubt adds a lot of challenge to the game. Many people who can beat the other games in the series have a lot of trouble with Majora's Mask, usually because of the pressure of the time limit. Then again, the dungeons don't mess around either. As you can probably guess, I find the time limit exciting. Equally, the way it plays into the darkness of Termina makes it one of the most memorable gameplay experiences of all time. Like, I really love time limits. Well, you know, when they're used in the right place. You know, there's the lame, boring way to do time-based difficulty. Like Clash of Clans, where the idea is to make it difficult to fight the temptation of opening up your wallet and buying away the wait timer. Man, phone games. I'll save the horrors contained within them for another video, because, let's be honest, I've barely scratched the surface on difficulty. I didn't even talk about difficulty curves or anything, due to being too busy yelling about Hades or whatever. It doesn't stop you from looking into this sort of thing for yourself. Think about what makes your favourite games challenging and/or engaging. You know, yell at me about them in the comments, and I'll almost guarantee reply to you, unless I become famous overnight, which is unlikely. Maybe I'll reply to you. Have a fantastic day. Well, that's what I would be saying if this video came out 3 weeks ago. But while I don't harbour any resentment towards you, viewer, the production of this video has been a total mess. I originally intended on making this a 2 videos in 1 pack, but the other video, while written and even partially recorded, was totally fucked and not ready. Also, to add on to this mess, my voice was totally ruined for a week. We just set back editing, you know, a week, because I have to edit a video to what I'm saying. And then, Hades, a game I plan to talk about a hell of a lot more, totally fucked itself on the last update and doesn't work on my computer, despite me absolutely having the correct system requirements for it. Like, it just broke. And, you know, speaking of Hades, there's going to be this whole section where I talked about it, but I scrapped it for being too negative and, like, messing up the flow of the entire video. I mean, but now fuck it. This section is negative enough. Might as well just play a bit of it. Fun fact. There are 2 prototype Cuthbucket video scripts that feature this game. A guide on becoming broken overpowered in Hades, and a video entirely focused on meta progression. These were written before I even had the idea for the Jungle Beat video. Yeah, ancient. The guide was scrapped because most of it boiled down to, just grind some shit and pick these good boons. And the meta progression video was just too negative. In my opinion, if you beat Hades and spent a lot of time with the game, you would have beaten it even if the game had no meta progression. You just couldn't convince yourself that you could do it. I mean, someone beat Hades with a pomegranate. Mainly I'm just salty that Spelunky 2 didn't win Best Indie. I know that was completely irrelevant to right now, but you know, I kind of want my opinion, like really, like super hot take, controversial, whoa, crazy opinion out here on the internet. So, you know, just slapping it in here, fantastic idea, great job me, whoa. Oh, this video has seriously been a disaster.
Luigi Fireball.
Luckily, I can say for sure the next video will not take this long. Absolute guarantee, 100%, will not take this long. Promise you that. And with all this said, have a good day. Yeah, that's right. I'm not even wishing you a fantastic one today. Yeah, have a good day, not a fantastic day. What you gonna do about it?